Did Kevin Bacon find Jimmy? Did Aldous Hodge figure out a way between that blue cone of silence? And what is going on with Jonathan Tucker's money behind that mirror? This is City on a Hill.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
How we doing, folks? Episode 3 of City on a Hill. I'm here with Keven Undergaro. I'm so excited. 4 years in the making, man.
4 years and two massholes finally get to work together.
I'm Jandreau. I'm from Lowell, Mass. This is a Chelsea man, if I remember correctly.
No. Medford boy, but worked in Charlestown for 10 years during this time period.
That's perfect.
So it's a little bit painful to watch, because it brings back so many dark memories.
For me, it's the ramifications of the time, and so you're going to experience the in time, and I'm experiencing the things that happened because of the show. So it's a perfect perspective.
Yeah, I think so. And you're Lowell, so you know, like, that's just as
this
tough.
This is all history.
Hardcore. Charlestown now has been gentrified. I don't know if you guys have talked about it.
I went to Southie last year, and there was a Whole Foods across from a Yoga Works, and it was uncomfortable.
That's right. It's a whole different world. Well, here's the thing. I like gentrification. I confess, because it's progress.
Sure.
And these were all architecturally beautiful houses.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see them renovated and redone. And
loving families, loving homes.
Yeah, because for what appears to be like nice, there's just a lot of darkness. I mean, this city that Charlestown Code of Silence was real. And I remember even when I worked there, it was like, listen, I think it was the least amount of murders solved in a city in the United States was in Charlestown. That's how tough it was, and everybody was just shady and dark and negative and sketchy, and we were always being robbed.
And Lowell in the early 2000s was even afraid of Charleston. Like and Lowell was the crack capital of the. Yeah, we got an HBO documentary, High and Crack Street.
You know what it was with Lowell? Lowell just wasn't organized.
Yeah.
So you had the dark, seedy people, but you didn't have, like, Charlestown was organized.
Yeah, you guys had a crime syndicate versus we had chaos and gangs.
And, you have the projects there, and that's why there will as long as the projects are there, there's always going to be what's going on. But it's because the real estate there is so close to Boston. It's such a great place to live. It's been cleaned up considerably, and I love it because I was one of the honest people working there, and we were always being robbed. We had a commissary, and I worked in the carnival business, and we would store all of our equipment and our food or whatever. And when I tell you, every week we were fighting them off. We were being robbed. We were being jumped. It was just like endless. And all you could do is slow them down.
And you and I were talking right before air, how many Jimmys we knew, how many Frankies we knew. These characters are literally people that we've experienced. I still know Jimmys that went exactly to Florida.
Yes. Yeah, and Florida's the big, runaway for them. And what I like about this show is that they're touching on the Italian and the Irish, and they mention it on this episode.
North End is definitely not our district.
Well, North Shore. Yeah. There's North Shore and there's South Shore, and the South Shore back then was very Irish. North Shore was Italian. So it's very interesting that did you see the crossover?
I love that.
With Bacon. And I just think Bacon is killing it. I think some characters are doing the accent superbly. Others are doing more New York.
It's overall stronger than most shows. For me, it's overall.
I think that's Ben and Matt.
Yeah.
Because I know from at least working with the Wahlbergs, they're very particular about it. But knowing people who know Ben and Matt and how involved they are, I'm sure they're sticklers. But I think acting-wise, and I've always said this, it's the hardest accent to capture.
Absolutely, because it's barely an accent. It's saying words wrong. It's hard to teach if you don't grow up with it.
Right.
Because it's
How
not
did you
like
avoid it? Because you don't have any of it.
I dropped it the moment I could. I worked on, because I came out here as an actor. So when I was doing any accent, I sounded like a Boston person with other things on top of it.
Can you still do it?
When I'm there, it comes back, but I can't bring it back. So my problem was I'd put like a Southern over top, and I just sound like I couldn't speak English.
Gotcha.
So what I did was I watched YouTubes of people with different accents, and I tried to find like a neutral. So I worked on this and brought this down, brought this up, and now I don't sound like I'm from anywhere.
Yeah, you don't. But acting wise, it's so difficult. I think Bacon, because he's Bacon.
Yeah,
he's killing it, and obviously Decourcey's from Brooklyn, so he's fine. But I hear a lot of people, what they end up doing is they go to kind of a New York.
They just add the thickness. They don't add the syllables.
Yes.
Because the R isn't as cartoonish as other people think it is, and when you do it wrong, it sounds like you're trying to do a Boston accent.
Yeah, and so I if I were the writers, I would almost rewrite people that they moved in from New York or whatever, because it's
authenticity.
so hard.
What I like about this show most is that they actually capture towns that don't usually get in the movies, and they talk about instances like I've never heard Lynn referenced in like The Departed or The Town. Like it's used right here.
Quincy.
Yeah.
We heard about Quincy. We heard about Revere.
Beach seeing it on camera was like,
yeah, it was great. And I'm noticing, and I should have done the research, but I'm noticing a lot of authentic Boston actors, and I think that's totally Ben and Matt.
And I guarantee the day players are authentically Boston, and the extras are 100. Like you look at these faces, they've lived some New England winters.
Yes. Oh my God. And just the style and how those. It's for me, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, I'm literally having to fist fight these guys, be jumped by them, and know that they'd be willing to stab or kill, and then there would be no repercussions.
And the cops, like Kevin Bacon, I mean, it was getting better in my childhood, but it was still, the cops were so corrupt or corrupt adjacent that Kevin Bacon, some of his monologues, I'm like, I've heard this shit.
Corrupt adjacent is the best term for it, because in their mind, that was being a cop.
It's just doing your job.
And
it's you making the money, the government won't pay you, so you're due, is what I always experience on the side.
Yeah. And for the ones, we haven't seen Kevin Bacon put his hand in the till, but the way that first episode, he's dropping the N-word like it's nothing.
Yeah.
He's he'll break any law to get what he wants in terms of solving the law. I mean, these were all things that, unfortunately, this was the bad side of Boston police. I will say, in their defense,
infinitely better now. In
their defense, but even not, yes, much better now, because I know my brother's a policeman, and I have three friends from college who are policemen. And one of the things that started happening in the 90s was they made it more appealing to college educated.
Oh, interesting.
Males and females, and so with that has come a degree of sophistication.
Absolutely.
And so it's made it better. But I will say, being in LA, literally, my car was vandalized. I caught the three, it was a really nice antique car that I finished myself. I caught the three guys, and rather than fist fight them, and I know you're a former fighter, because most Boston guys, like, we just all
have to be.
It's a way of life. We all know how to fight. But I was like, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to call the police. I called the police, and the LA police came out in their own good time. And when they got there, I'm with my girlfriend at the time, and you could tell we were like the nice couple, and we and these were like degenerates, and the cop looked at me and goes, well, what did you do to make them do that to you? I'm like, excuse me? Another time, I've had shootings when we were in a pretty dangerous place when we first moved out. Had shootings happen, called the police. They showed up 2 weeks later. What I miss about Boston was like stormtroopers, and they took it personally.
And Boston cops protect their own and their citizens. There's a pride to Boston that is so real.
So, and they'll break the law to do it, which sucks. But
sometimes greater good.
Exactly. So, like a Boston cop would have said to my wife and I, or my girlfriend at the time, would have said, "Oh, really? Well, you two just go back up to your place.
Yep, we'll take care of this.
And we'll take care of it from here."
Yep. And we wouldn't need to know what happened to those two guys.
And I never would have. And you know what? Those people would have never bothered me again, and they would have learned their freaking lesson.
And the Boston Marathon was a testament that nationwide saw Boston Strong being represented in a way that no one got arrested for the stuff that happened in those houses. Like, when the cops went in houses and they weren't there, whatever was happening on the table,
that's it.
It's fine. We didn't see a thing. That's the, you know what I mean? Like, that's for later. Yep. That's for tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're looking for these guys. And that's a great tangent into the beginning of the show. It really opens with a powerful portrayal of how corrupt the Boston police could be at the time. Not all of them, but how they could be.
And racist, and definitely, and yeah, they'll go there.
And the beautiful thing about the show when it opened was it dealt with racism head on in the first episode, and then this third episode is handling sexism head on. So I'm really appreciating how we're handling all of the issues of the times, and they're not skirting it. They're saying, hey, Jackie's in this frickin' church, and she's being asked what she is doing wrong that her husband is cheating on her.
Oh my God! It's by the way, you guys, this is so the end of so many things. This is pre-MySpace, pre-Facebook, pre-iPhone, pre-millennial culture, pre-Gen Z culture. This to me is the end of that world.
You called an operator still. Like, there was no connectivity.
Right. And I feel like Jackie is the dinosaur who's about to be extinct. Like, this is the end. Decourcey's the new guard coming in. But to your point, that was Catholic life. It was, what did you do wrong, miss, for him to have done this to you?
A marriage is a two-way street, but we're only going to look at one way, and it's not his way. So it's that guilt.
And that's the old priest. That was the attitude. And then, by the way, and then when so many parishioners back there discovered during that time period all the molestation that was taking place within the community, that's when they were like, I'm out. And that's when women like this, like Jackie's wife, or back in real life, were like, I'm out. I'm out of this. But this is so interesting because, and I don't know if this is why they decided to center on this time period in this story, but this is the beginning of the end.
And I love that the show is shot in the time period style, so it feels like you're not watching a show about the early 90s. You feel like you're watching an early 90s show that takes place in the present.
Great point.
At no point do I think, hey, this is a period piece. I think, hey, I'm watching a show they just uncovered from 1993.
Yes.
And that makes it feel more like I'm with them, not watching them. I don't feel like a voyeur.
It's a great note.
I'm an underdog with these people.
Great note.
And Jackie, I feel like, is this great through line to the everyday person. Jackie is the person that's surviving the Kevin Bacons and the Aldous Hodge, Aldous Hodge is the good guy, but he's still the law. So if you're a Boston person, you always feel like you're below the law trying to handle yourself.
Always.
And I feel like when I'm watching this show, I'm like, I wouldn't trust Aldous or Kevin Bacon because I'm the guy that might have done something 10 years ago I got to figure out.
Yeah, and by the way, we're taught to be polite and scared of police, whereas out here I see guys wise off to cops all the time.
And that's why I think cops have to retaliate the way they do out here. Is there's a different linear path. Cops out in Boston are respected to at least a point. Out here, it's
they're
just chaos.
feared because you just know it's like,
you keep those knuckles?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. Look who tripped and fell.
Yeah, so sorry, this baton fell in your hand while you were getting in the car. Like, the life happens. So, I mean, not saying, experience. But the beautiful thing about the Jackie relationship with the priest is it reflects again with her mother-in-law. And her mother-in-law is also not guilting her. Her mother-in-law is also in the old guard of like, what are you doing wrong? He's the guy that's making all these mistakes.
Yeah, with Jenny. So the mother-in-law is, is going to start pushing this young priest on her.
Yeah, and they make it really clear that the mother-in-law doesn't have faith in her, and neither does the priest, and she's got no one except for this young, handsome priest that's swooping right in.
Yeah, you see the writing on the wall there.
And I think that's a really clever way to show how Catholic Boston is without it being a show about Catholicism. Because we're feeling oppressed without being oppressed for religion.
Yeah.
And that's the show, and that's the beauty of the show is you're with them.
That time.
Yeah,
that's
that time
where it was at its peak.
So I feel like Jackie was the lead of the show, along with Aldous, who plays Decourcey, and it went beautifully from the underdog, everyday person to the law and the lawyers and all those things. And Decourcey, we've seen be corrupt in his own way by playing Kevin Bacon with those stories in episode 2.
Yep.
We've seen him have to do some crazy stuff for the force and for himself. And now we're starting to see with that beautiful speech how good of a lawyer he is.
He's so good.
This was such a lawyer episode where it was like a few good men, he's just coming out swinging.
And remember, this was by the way, the one thing we haven't touched on, so we talked about the Charleston Code of Silence. What we haven't talked about is how segregated and divisive Boston was back then.
Yeah.
Now, cynics will say it's still like that now. I will tell you, if you go to a Red Sox game, if you go to a Celtics game, now compared to 30 years ago, you will see a vast difference.
Absolutely.
Multicolor, multiracial, and it's wonderful. But 30 years ago, no, it was all white people at those things. Blacks generally lived in Roxbury, and that's how it was. And to see that he is able to reach these people and see beyond color and see, hey, this could be your children, this could be you who was affected, and the way they go, it was great. I love seeing him in action. And I was excited.
Every word he said, the editing of cutting to the faces at the exact right time, because in courtroom shows, a lot of times the extras are not as good as the leads. Right. So it was a really beautiful thing to see an actor at the height of his powers operating off of a great eye line, getting these extras to actually emote in a way that they should. I hope they got paid. Like, you know what I mean? Like they handled themselves like actors.
I would think, are they featured because of that?
They'd have to be featured, but they might not be day players. So nobody spoke. So therefore, they could have just been well cast.
I know in commercials, there's a rule that, because I know I did a commercial with my wife for Pantene, and because the camera focused on me
the amount of time.
Yeah, I ended up getting paid.
The amount of time is going to make them featured, but unless they speak more than 3 words, they're not paid as a day player, as far as I know. So gotcha. I really hope they seem to have cast them well, and I hope they have more work in the next episode, because that whole scene really showed the other side of what Boston's about. Is people think of Boston as this very dumb, college, bro-y, backward racist, but it is that with MIT. I think from the outside,
Yes,
that's...
you do see. And here's the thing, I will tell you, you know what the proof is on how smart Boston is?
How many Ivy League schools we got?
Well, but then the cynic would say, well, that's all the outsiders from all over the world to go there. Okay, no, I'll do you one better. And to me, this was proof. So I'll give you two things. One, Monty Python. So really going to date myself. Have you heard of Monty Python?
Python, yeah.
Okay. Very sophisticated fathers of this unique kind of comedy.
Sure.
Well ahead of their time. In the early 70s, when they left England, which, you know, has always been very snooty about literature, very snooty about the creative, and very snooty about comedy, when they came to the United States and performed, they were booed off stage in Texas. You know, Californians were more polite but scratched their heads.
Yeah.
The place they were celebrated, Boston.
No, I never knew that.
Okay, and I'll give you another one. So David Letterman, again, if you know your history of comedy, David Letterman, to me, was a revolutionary in comedy and what he did. Highly respected member of the comedic community. And when the Red Sox played the Mets and lost in that heartbreaking game back in '86, he told his writers, "We're not making fun of Boston tonight." What do you mean, Dave? It's New York and the Mets. We're not doing it. Why? Because his Boston audience was so loyal.
That's
Boston
incredible.
was his most loyal audience. And why? Because Boston gets it. Then the third example I'll give you is that I remember I used to follow the top 10 TV shows in Boston, and then the top 10 TV shows in terms of viewership nationwide. Now, nationwide, the top 10 might be Home Improvement and lighter show, the nanny shows like that. Top 10 in Boston, Seinfeld, you know, Saturday Night Live, Larry Sanders, all the more sophisticated
The highbrow
fare.
stuff that's lasted.
So, and I will tell you this as well, that even the biggest degenerates in Boston have the most amazing senses of humor.
And
they get every joke. They're completely sarcastic, very witty.
Yeah.
So, no, it's a very smart
And
place.
they can keep up in conversation in ways that other cities can't. And I pride myself in my ability to talk to anybody. And that's a Boston element that I was given from being around every type of person.
Right. And, you know, and I'll tell you, shrewd and scary. So I will say on the flip side is, yes, you get a good Bostonian, salt of the earth, generous, will give you the shirt off their back. But you get a bad one, run.
Yeah.
Run.
Yeah.
Because you will never see it coming. They're just like they said about Jackie's character in episode 1. You'll never see it coming. That's a classic Bostonian. Biggest con men in the world. Shrewdest people in the world.
Because we like to think
and they're
3
not
steps ahead.
obvious.
Exactly. We like to think
A
ahead.
New Yorker is like, oh, yo, moving on. He's obvious.
Yeah.
A Californian, yo, dude, hey, obvious.
Yeah.
Boston, not obvious.
And we're proud of that.
Scary.
There's
Yeah.
a Boston.
I'm
Boston
not
strong.
anymore. It frightens me.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now. I'm just calling it down the middle. I've had Bostonians. I have the love-hate. So I have you, Coy, and Roxy, whatever. Like, I just love, can't get enough of. And then people in Hollywood as well. Other people in Hollywood know. Then there's others who are just that side of Hollywood, of Boston. I go, no, get the F. I can't run away fast enough.
So, like, for me, we were talking about comedy. Like, Bill Burr is a perfect example of what I think is the modern.
Look at Bill Burr, Louis. I mean, keep going. I'm saying me short.
Yeah, no, I'm saying Bill Burr always is like 5 steps ahead of what comedy's going to be. Because if you look at his special from his last 2 specials, that's where comedy is now.
That's right.
He's always ahead of the curve. And I feel like that is another thing the show, bringing it back to the show, Sitting on a Hill shows that this is a show set in 1993. And how many of these issues are what America's dealing with now? So Boston was dealing with some of the stuff head on.
Right.
And now it's a more of a national issue.
And the criminals are 5 steps ahead. And then you see a guy like Jackie, even though he's an old timer and he's a drunk. And by the way, highly educated.
Exactly.
We find out from the first episode, he's no joke. He's a highly educated man, but just has his demons. But again, he's 5 steps ahead.
And what I love about Jenny's relationship with Jackie is Jenny isn't weaker or less smart, and that's one of the things I love about the show is
it's just she's in the 90s.
They make the women as strong or stronger than the men because why would you date someone weaker than you? Like mates don't end up with a weaker half. Right. You need to have that equality.
And by the way, and the women, the gangster women back then were gangster.
Jonathan Tucker's wife counting the money.
Yes.
Which is one of my favorite scenes in this episode. It was a blip, but her ripping that mirror off the wall and Jonathan Tucker's wife having so much command of what that relationship is. And that's a Boston woman.
And her instinct was that, no, he got the money. And even though he didn't, we know that he went and found the money.
Yep.
And she saw it. before she saw it in her brain before her
And
husband.
she counts every bill. She pulls up every. So I really love the relationship with the women in the show with the men, and I love that this 90s sensibility is showing what we need to today in racism being a problem from then, sexism being a problem from then, addressing it head on. And Decourcey's wife, Siobhan, I love her characterization because we haven't seen a lot of her yet, but every time she's on screen, we want to see more. And I feel like she's going to be a huge player as soon as
huge.
Like mid-season, she's going to be everything.
Yes.
And they've laid this groundwork beautifully.
And I think there's a little flirtation going on with her and one of the people over in the church.
Yep.
And obviously we see Decourcey and Rachel from Revere. You know, the investigator from Revere. I think there's something there too. Do you feel like there's a little sexual tension between them?
Yeah, and I love that Siobhan plays it. I think it might not be tension that she ever acts on, but she uses them to manipulate them. I don't know if she's actually doing anything, but she's definitely playing that card.
Not yet.
Not yet. And that's why I think mid-season we're going to see this.
Well, we're going to, I don't know if it's the right time to talk about, but this series, I was saying to you earlier, was based on Operation Ceasefire. So talking about being ahead of the curve, one of the other problems that they were having was so much gang violence.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just by the way, Charlestown is the bank robbery capital of the world. I knew bank robbers.
More per mile than any place.
And one of the guys I worked for was a full-on bank robber. That's what he did, and the carny business was his front.
Wow.
And he would tell us all these stories, and I remember being like, this isn't true. And then when I finally talked to some of the police, as I got a little older, because I had done it for 10 years, like, oh, yeah, no, hardcore. We can't get him. He's this slippery.
Wow.
Yeah, so, but Operation Ceasefire took place during this time period, and what it was a way to get gangs to stop killing each other, and it was there was a professor named David Kennedy who ended up working with the Boston. He was a criminologist, and he ended up working with the Boston Police Department, and basically was like, listen, you guys applying more force and violence is just begetting more violence.
Right.
Very simple. And that's when they all started working together. Now, you see the African-American police officer who goes into Decourcey's office. He's old school.
Yeah.
He's like, you better tell him to stop or we're going to stop him.
Right.
And it's that old school way of, you're going to bring force, I'm going to bring more force. What happened during this time period, and you're going to see it in the evolution of this show, is trying to find a new way. Like, let's get rid of the old way, and the new way is let's work together. And I don't know what they'll do with the show, and this is by no means a spoiler, but I will tell you with Operation Ceasefire, they ended up over a few years, like, I mean, maybe even 60% down, and I'll check out next week shootings. And again, talk about being ahead of their time.
60%
This is
is
exactly
huge.
what a Chicago needs right now. And I know Chicago's bigger.
Sure.
But they're having the same problem between the city officials and the gangs. So this is where we're going to go. And I know with Officer Minogue, who's a good cop, but again, has to play the system.
Sure.
Being sent in to figure out,
who's corrupt, which side is which.
What gang member did the shooting.
Right. That scene also, like, that felt so scary real. Like, that felt like moments. You've been in churches or in, like, public places when you see the wrong people come in and you don't know where it's going to go, and that's the worst case scenario.
Well, to your point, Coy, is that's what's going on today.
Yeah.
Someone comes in a movie theater and goes, oh, Jesus, like, is this the day?
And to this day, it's terrifying to see someone walk in to the left, look around, and leave, and the rest of the movie you're wondering why they came in. And that's that's awful that's actually in the back of our heads at all times. And this captured what that felt like. And I also think this captures, for people outside of Boston, what it feels like to just walk around day in the life, because you're meeting characters that feel approachable but are still larger than life. Jackie feels very larger than life, but still like people that we know.
But Boston, that's massive.
That's a lot of them.
So bigger than life. Yeah, such characters. By the way, that's why they're usually great con men, because they're so charming.
And why they're usually great actors. Like, no disrespect to every Boston actor, but like, you're good at your job because...
Go back to what we talked about for the IQ and how high it is in Boston. Again, another point I will make to back that up. Look at all the Boston actors and actresses, and not only how good they are at their craft, fine. We have plenty of great actors. But think about what great businessmen and women they all are.
The roles they end up in.
Dane Cook, like, look what he did. Revolution, right? Ben and Matt, great filmmakers. Revolution. Mark Wahlberg, hello. Like, Food Chains and...
The Marky Mark song in this episode?
Which is great. Yes. Phenomenal.
Brilliant landing.
Phenomenal.
Made my whole week.
Same with me. I loved it.
The right time frame, the right town, it was perfect.
Perfect. So again, but baby, just going back to, and listen, my wife, Maria Menounos, look at what an entrepreneur she is. Just Boston people. It's like.
And every sports, not even to mention the empires, like just individuals and also what the teams are able to do with that certain savvy.
Yes. Yeah. There's just something big. Again, great place to visit. And I like how they've cleaned it all up. So it's a beautiful place to visit. But yeah.
It's got its merits.
I love this show.
So now Boston Strong is something that I think should be a special feature on this show because I think every episode there's going to be a moment that shows us what Boston Strong is for that episode. Boston Strong to me in this episode was the moment where you see Kevin Bacon, where you see Jackie laying on the couch and you hear the Wachusett commercial. Because I haven't thought of Wachusett in 10 years. That was the sound of our childhood. That was to me, so Boston Strong is going to be a special every single week. The most Boston moment of the episode, to me, Wachusett. Blew my mind. What was yours?
My Boston Strong moment was when Jimmy gets caught.
Yep.
He's got his cocaine. He's in jail. He gets his one phone call. He calls Jackie.
Yep.
Okay, being the smart ass that he is, he took the 18 grand.
Yeah.
He gave him a few crumbs worth of information. Didn't give him where the bodies were.
Yep.
Takes the money and runs. And now the reverse, where Jackie says to him, you know what? Now you get, just think of it this way.
Close to your kids.
You get to be close to your kids.
Yeah.
And visiting hours are pretty good. Take care. Boom. And to me, that was the Boston moment of, you're shrewd, but I'm shrewder.
Yep.
And I'm also, because I'm a 90s cop, I'm going to give you all your shit back, except I'm smarter than you.
Yeah.
So F you and sit you because to me, like, Jimmy he kills me because he's such a weasel.
Oh God, yeah, he's incredible.
Oh, he's such a weasel, and he's gonna make all his family members' lives horrible.
Yeah,
man, and I don't think we've seen the last of his
definitely not.
ex-wife and the kids.
There's going to be stuff with the ex-wife and the kids. We're going to see his stuff in prison, and I love that he thought he was 2 steps ahead, but Kevin Bacon was 3 steps ahead, and we're going to see those ramifications throughout the series.
He's going to give up those bodies to get out.
Yep.
He's going to get to that cash in the mirror.
Yeah, 100%.
At some point. And man, like next week, you could see with the previews, it's going to be crazy.
I love that the mirror represents kind of like the Breaking Bad teddy bear to me. Where it's this ominous looming item that makes you think, like, what's coming to that? What's coming to this? And I keep thinking about that mirror, even though it's only in like 5 minutes.
It's so sad because the wife and Jimmy are so disciplined.
Yes.
So another thing I learned in the carny business, I always talk about it on my show and also in life. But they used to always, there was a guy, Filthy. His name was Phil, but we called him Filthy.
Yeah.
And Filthy would always say, "You can scam all you want, but you got to work." And what they meant by that was you have to keep a day job.
Yep.
Because if you keep a day job and you have a W-2 form,
yep.
Then it's like the police are less likely to look at you.
Right.
It's the guys that have no job, but they have the new Cadillac, the
owns
nice
a triple
clothes.
decker in Southie. What's he doing?
Yeah, and back then, exactly. That's all the crap they did. So the brother works at Purity Supreme. Shout out to old Purity Supreme,
yeah.
which is now
like
probably Shaw's or whatever.
Or Hannaford.
Yeah, one of those Star Market. but
Hannaford, everybody.
Hannaford.
The last time I thought of Hannaford.
But anyway, he works at Purity, and then the wife has her business, and then they're so smart they didn't take the $250 and say, "Let's go buy." She's working the books.
Yep.
We're not going to spend the money frivolously. We know we have to sit on it.
Right.
We're going to wash money. I mean, really smart. And this is why I can't stand Jimmy. Is such a weasel because he's the one who's going to ruin it all.
He's going to ruin everything. And he's like so studiously working at a grocery store publicly. I like that he also has a public job where people can come find him and be like, "Here I am with the cabbage." And that's what you do. That's the move.
Yes, that's the smartest move. You can scam all you want, but you got to work.
Exactly. That's brilliant. I love
by
that.
the way, I always take another step. Because I think it's life.
Oh, 100%.
So I'll say to actors and writers and anyone who wants to be in our business, I'm like, you can scam all you want, but you got to work. And my version of that is you got to drive Uber.
Yeah.
10 bar, whatever it is.
Have 6 months money in the bank.
Yeah,
at all
you
times.
Still have to work. I'm sorry. You all want to have the fairy tale life. And, and especially today in our business, it's so challenged economically speaking, but Everyone just wants that, like, I'm 22 and I want to just be starring on a sitcom and making millions. And
Sorry.
no, you can scam all you want, but you got to work.
You make time for this.
So you do. That's right. So this is your privilege. So you have to work at something to make your money, and then your scam is the acting, the writing, the directing, whatever.
And this is a damn fine Demoulas, everybody. I'll take it.
That's it. So we're at Demoulas right now.
Living the Demoulas dream. Now, before we wrap up, we're running out of time. Next week, what do we have predictions for next week?
Oh
Where do you see
my
it going?
God! So
TV predictions.
Ooh.
So what blows me away about next week and how rapidly this is going, a lot of shit goes down apparently next week.
Yeah, the next week on looks insane.
So you see, looks like Judy and Jackie are gonna get into it. Okay, but then you see Jackie gets punched by somebody.
Yep.
So whatever feathers are being ruffled, I think, by Jimmy. I think Jimmy's going to give up some more stuff.
Yeah.
But now it's going to go above Frankie's pay grade.
Ah, okay.
Because those, guns and stuff like that, maybe there's super organized crimes. Remember,
Right.
Macaulay Culkin's brother playing that. We're going to see him again.
Guaranteed.
Because he mentions Frank Salemi. So I knew, I hate to say this is scary, I knew Frank Salemi's son.
Okay.
And scary guy. He's no longer with us. He ended up dying of AIDS.
Okay.
But and not sexually, but through drugs. He was.
Intravenous.
But he was crazy. I worked at I'll give you more information. So I worked in the combat zone. Do you remember the combat zone? You were probably a little kid.
What was it? Maybe I'll know in context.
It was an area in Boston that had strip joints, sex clubs, adult bookstores. Again, pre-internet. And I've always said, and I bet you they'll mention it on this show, this is when it was collapsing. It was in the 90s that it was going away. I was working there.
Wow, okay.
And sometimes when I didn't come out, my dad got sick, so I couldn't come out to LA to work in Hollywood. I would do the carny business in the summers, and then in the winters, I would work in the adult bookstore in the combat zone.
It's like Mission Hill area? Was it over Satcham? Or?
It's near the hospital, Mass General.
Okay, yeah.
And now it's Theater District. It's all cleaned up and it's high end, but it was dark. Always getting jumped every time I went to work. And then came to find out, which I didn't know, is that the people that ran the bookstore were in cahoots with the guys, the mobsters that were running the carny business, and they knew they were sharing me, and I didn't know.
Jesus.
And then there was someone's wedding, and I went to, and they were all at a table, and they laughed their asses off. In 5 years,
You were flipping each other's money? You were just like
they were, and they didn't know. They'd be like, and it was prearranged that they could have me in the winter, and the other guys could have me in the summer.
Had no idea for 5 years.
No freaking clue. But the Salemi crew and all of them, and scary people. And I did on 3 different occasions go by Whitey Bulger. And when I tell you the hair on the back of my neck just went up, it was frightening. Just remember the quote in the first episode about Whitey. He's the biggest
Whitey's
myth
the
going.
Boogeyman. Whitey, like the
He
Babadook.
was the boogeyman.
If you guys have ever seen the Babadook, Whitey Bulger's the Babadook for Boston and was for years.
He lived up to the hype. And I will tell you, like, I remember just shitting my pants, I'm like, don't make eye contact. I was just in the bookstore. I'm like, I don't want to look at him. because scary.
He loomed so large when he got caught out here. I had phone calls where people were like, "Hey, do you know anything about it?" And I was like, "What?" He's a presence.
He's a presence, and that's a whole other story. But what I think with Macaulay Culkin is, eventually, there's some bigger people.
Yeah.
Okay. That and because Kevin Bacon's character is sloppy, because Jackie's sloppy, he's not the clean-cut FBI agent. Okay, he lives a sloppy life, so he's open to, dirty, getting beat up.
I see him ratting people out to the bigger fish later in the season. I see him giving up people in some of his intel, and I think that could be a problem for Jimmy.
He totally will.
He's gonna flip.
He's gonna do whatever it takes.
That goes. And I think we're also gonna find out. I think the characters we've been talking about, like all the women in the show that are about to have those power plays, I think that's gonna happen episode 5 or 6. So next episode is gonna be all of the kind of like wrapping up these first 4 episodes. There's gonna be a lot of chaos that leads to where the mid-season goes. So I think we're gonna see a lot of power plays the next episode. I think we're gonna see a lot of like action and violence that's gonna lay some drama for episodes 5 and 6.
So have you heard yet if there's a renewal? Have we heard?
I haven't heard anything yet. I personally haven't.
All right, have we heard about the numbers and the buzz? Because I know there's the critics
like it. Yeah, I've heard that it's got good viewership, and I've heard that its second episode had less of a drop off than normal. That's all I've heard so far about
Which is good. Which is encouraging.
So I think it's going to keep going. And
I
it's
mean,
definitely-
you love it?
The writer's from Quincy, and he gets it.
Oh, my
Like, he's
God.
definitely... I met this writer 3 years ago.
Are we getting him on the show?
We should totally get him on the show.
Yeah, let's go. Let's tweet at him.
Yeah, 'cause-
Just drop at Maria Menounos.
Yeah, let's
at
get him.
AfterBuzz.
Okay.
And if he's out here, or at least he could call in.
He was at a pool party like 3 years ago and was talking about this show he was doing with Ben and Matt, and I was like, what? And then I saw his name in the credits, and I was like, that guy from that
The
thing.
writer, or is he the creator?
The writer. I think it's the same guy.
That's what I'm saying. The
Yeah.
showrunner.
So we'll try to get him on, and
would
absolutely
love.
like the most authentic Boston feeling show. I'm a huge fan of it.
I am.
After all these years, man, we finally got to talk Boston professionally.
Yeah, and I hope you'll let me sit in some more.
Oh, please, dude. Let's.
And we have Kia, who's from Roxbury, right?
Yeah.
So, God, I can only imagine what her perspective is.
The town, Mill City, and Roxbury on a show.
Oh,
Some of the
man.
best places in America, in my opinion. I stand by it.
And the Angulos who got, he brought down. So Mike Angulo was kind of involved on a tangent with the Carney business. So I was dealing with them, and then Skinny in the bookstore.
That's incredible.
Excuse me. Now I'm saying too much. I shouldn't have said that name. Forget it. But anyway, yeah. I don't want to talk anymore.
And I was right after like the Arrow right after you were like I knew Golden Gloves, Mickey Ward, and all those guys. So it's really interesting to hear stories that led to like the Lowell side. So as this show develops, I'm sure more chaos will ensue, and we'll hear all about it next week. We'll be on, I believe, on Sunday, talking all more Sitting on the Hill. I love the show. Can't wait. See you guys next week.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.